Hello and welcome to this interview series where I interview the different contributors for the book Autism and Buddhist Practice. This interview series is partly to reach out to autists and let them know how useful Buddhist practice can be in navigating in a world where you feel like a square peg in a round hole. But it's also meant as an educational series for Buddhist centers, Buddhist sanghas, and Buddhist communities to learn more about how it is to be an autistic Buddhist and how they can make their center, sangha, or community more attractive and useful for autists. And today with me, I have Prajnanandi. Hello, so good to see you.
Hello, Pernille. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here.
And you have written chapter 12 in the book that is called Joining a Sangha, Finding a Way to Friendship. And what we're talking about today is really a huge topic for so many of us. The theme of today is going to be about friendship, about finding friends, and how complicated it can be, especially if you don't know that you're an autistic, if you don't know that you have autism and that you are autist. But so normally I ask people about their lives before and after diagnosis, but I would actually like to mix it up a bit with you because you found out that you were an autist way into your Buddhist practice. So I would like to start with to hear about your Buddhist practice first. Then we're going to talk about your life before and after diagnosis because your Buddhist practice changed a lot when you found out that you were an autist. And then we're moving on to the theme of the day, which is about friendship.
Fine, great.
So first I would like to hear about your Buddhist practice. How was your life before you became a Buddhist, and how did it come about when you found Buddhism, and why did you look in that direction?
Okay, so before I was a Buddhist, I was a scientific atheist, had no religious background, no religious training, no desire for religion, actually. It wasn't something that I wanted to be part of. And I didn't go into a Buddhist center looking for Buddhism. I went into Buddhism or a Buddhist center because I have arthritis and I was in a lot of pain, and I read in New Scientist that meditation could help with pain relief. So I thought, well, who meditates? And I thought Buddhists meditate. So let's go and find a Buddhist center. And that is why I went into the center. And I absolutely was not looking for Buddhism.
And the way,
but when so go on.
Yes, no, but the way that you found the exact direction that you went to Triratna, that you're now an order member about. I mean, it was such a huge change in your life, and it was complete random why it was that center. I find that story so funny. If you could tell that.
Yeah, well, I looked around my local centers, and actually, I was scared. I didn't know what was going to be there. And I also knew that I couldn't sit on the floor. And my view of Buddhists was they all sit on the floor meditating for hours. And so I wrote to them saying, do you have chairs? And only one center wrote back to me saying, yes, we have chairs. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I could go into this one then. Yes. And I was pleased that I'd got a reply. Most of the others didn't bother to reply.
Exactly.
So actually, the reason I went into a Triratna center was because they had chairs.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you came the day, and then the first encounter experience was very much like mine when I entered Triratna first time. So please share how that was when you.
I was amazed by what I found there. There were a lot of really friendly people, and they just welcomed me in.
Yeah.
And for me, that was quite a revelation, because I get on well with people, but I don't have friends, or I didn't when I went into the center. So to be just welcomed in and said, hey, come in, have a cup of tea, here's a biscuit, was actually something quite new. And I thought there was something really special about this. And then we went to meditate, and meditation just opened up instantly. And I was really quite surprised, but it did. And then I came out, and we were people talking about meditation, and people talking about their Buddhist practice, and people just being friendly. And I realized that there was something here that I wanted. didn't quite know that that was actually friendship as such, but it was something really different. And so I wanted to come back. And so I did. I started to come in regularly.
Amazing, amazing. And yes, that was my experience with Triratna as well. I have been in Theravada and Mahayana. I've been in lots of different countries, been to lots of different centers. And when I entered a Triratna center the first time, it was that sensation of, yeah, like friendship. People was really interested in my practice, really interested in getting to know me, and having that sensation of a living sangha was
Sorry, I've got a wasp. Go away. I like wasps, but not near me. Okay, sorry. Yes.
No, but it was that sensation of a living sangha. I have had a sangha in the bodhisattvas and the arahats, but I've never had a living sangha, and that was the sensation I had with Triratna. It was really a welcoming, because in Triratna friendship is very, very, very important. Very important.
Yeah, I mean it's what Sangha, the teacher who set up this movement, started from.
Yes.
The whole idea that spiritual friendship is the whole of the spiritual life.
Exactly.
It is fundamental ethos of Triratna.
Yes.
So it wasn't a surprise, I learned later, that people will be welcoming me warmly.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you go into a Triratna centre. And many people comment on the fact as they come in, this place feels different. Yeah. It did to me, and from the sound of it, it did to you when you went into your first centre.
Yes, yes, most definitely, most definitely. And another thing that I really found very useful in Triratna as an autist is that everything is so organized. When you want to study, I love the suttas and I love the stories and I love the Pali Canon, but the way that it's structured in the Mitra study, if you want to develop your practice further, you can choose to become a Mitra, and a Mitra is a friend of Triratna. So it's a person that is supporting and helping the Sangha, and while we are deepening our own practice. And there is a Mitra study that you can start locally in your local Sangha. And for that, you have books. You have books where you start at book 1, chapter 1, and then off you go. And then you have a group that you meet with and you debate the sutras and your own insight. So it's meant as a deepening practice. Could you talk about your experience with that? Because I would love to hear more about that.
And I think I asked to join a study group quite soon after I'd gone to the centre, and I was very lucky in that there was an opening. I wasn't at that point a Mitra. I didn't know whether I wanted to be a Mitra. I was still quite cautious about the whole idea of being Buddhist because of my background. As I say, it was completely atheist and scientific. So the thought that I might actually be Buddhist hadn't really stirred there yet. But I wanted to find out more, because basically I wanted to find out more about meditation, because I was having very strong meditative experiences right from the very first session. And there was something in that actually helped me. So I asked to join a study group, and that was great. It was structured. It was very clear what we were doing. It was a small group of people who were the same people each time, so that I could begin to build relationships with these people. And I think it was that at the end of the first year, when in Triratna you sort of have to decide whether you want to become a Mitra in order to continue study, I realised that I did. Yeah. I did want to become a Mitra, and I did want to go on studying, and I wanted to go on studying with these people because there was something growing here that was new to me, and it was probably friendship, but I still wasn't quite sure.
Yeah. Could we just circle back, because you said it twice now that the meditation really had an influence on you. Could you talk about what that was? It's for all the autists sitting and listening that are not meditating.
Yeah, I was quite surprised in that the very first time I meditated, I went into what I now know are the jhanas. I didn't know that at the time. I was just in a really open, really, full of loving kindness space, which was something unlike anything I had ever experienced in my entire life. And I came out of it thinking, what was that? Yeah. And I started asking around because I assumed that that's what happened to everybody when you meditate. I now know it doesn't happen to everybody, but it does happen to quite a lot of people. Particularly, I maybe think autists, because actually we're good at focus.
Yes.
We're good at actually doing what we're asked to do. I was asked to clear my mind in that first session, so I did.
Yeah.
It was that simple. And that, I think, is why I went very deep. And having gone very deep, I knew that I could do it, and I knew that it would probably happen again, and it does. It's never gone away.
Mm.
And I think it's the autistic.
Oh, Prajnanandi, you just jumped out. Could you repeat that, please?
It's the autistic strengths that
Yeah.
help me to do the meditation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I had the same experience first time that I meditated. It was the same thing. I was asked, just clear your mind, and I did, because I was asked to do it, and then I do it as a good autist. Then we do it with soul, and that sensation of quiet, of calm and quiet that I hadn't had, because I'm like constantly bombarded by my sense experiences, you know, with smell and taste and touch, all the layers of that. And then I was just sitting, it was just quiet. It was, beautiful.
Yeah.
My experience as well. Yeah, so go on.
Yeah, and I also want to say that meditation doesn't have to be sitting.
No.
For some autistic people, it's walking meditation.
Yeah.
That really, really makes a difference.
Yes.
To be focused on how you're placing your feet and the experience of that and the movement and the joy in that movement is what gets us into meditation. So if you're sitting there thinking, but I'm autistic and I can't sit still, you don't have to. Why not try walking meditation?
Exactly. Yeah, just having the awareness in the walking as it happens. Yeah. Or if you can't sit still like me right now, and you need to stim, then you just stim away. Yes. There's no rules that autistic people need to sit still and not stim when they meditate. It's completely fine to stim in whichever way you need. Yeah.
And remember that almost everybody else is going to have their eyes shut.
Yeah.
So people are not going to be seeing you stimming.
Knock yourself out.
It's yeah.
Amazing. Okay, really nice. Yes, then you talk about that you then became a mitra, and then you wanted to go deeper and go into the ordination process, and that is where the issues started for you. That started to be complicated for you. I think I want to read a part, because at this point you didn't know that you were autistic, and you have a lovely description about how you have always had issues with building friendships. You work well with people, but you don't build friendships, and you get on well with people, but you don't build friendships. And that part is it's so recognizable. It's so recognizable. So I would like to read a part of the book where you talk about that interaction that you have with people, being a mitra, where they give you feedback on how you can be better at meeting up with people, and because maybe you could talk about that first. A normal thing when you want to start the ordination process in Sharana is that you start to go for a cup of coffee. You meet a lot of members and go for a cup of coffee. Could you please tell me about your experience with that? Because
Okay. First of all, I didn't know how to meet people. Yeah. It wasn't clear to me when they said meet people how I would do this. How on earth does one meet people if you've never done it? If you've never had a one-to-one conversation on anything other than work, what is it that you do? Eventually, somebody asked me, why don't we go for a cup of coffee? And I thought, okay, maybe that's what we do. Yes. But that raised a whole new area of real difficulty, because I had no idea what we're going to do when we're going to go for a cup of coffee. We're probably going to be in a fairly noisy place, probably somewhere I wasn't very familiar with. And what on earth are we going to talk about? Because I had no small talk, absolutely none. And I knew that. I'm direct. Over the years, that's changed a bit, but at that time, I had none. So what on earth were we going to do? So I went, and I was afraid. I was scared, but this seemed important. And we did go, and we did talk, but we didn't really connect because I wasn't, I think, responding in the way that the person who was talking to me was expecting. And that confused them. And I wasn't at that point skilled enough to be able to say, what's going on here? You know, okay, I'm not giving them the cues that they need in order to be able to do this as a conversation. We could talk about Buddhism. That was about it. Nothing else worked. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I'm really good at, I had a really nice interview with Pete the other day where he said that when people ask him meet up, and then start to talk about the weather, then he thinks that the conversation is going, we're starting out with the weather, and it's because there's a purpose with the conversation. That the weather, it must be that we're talking about global warming, or we're talking about, tornado formations, or we're talking about, it can't just be weather. It needs to be, there needs to be a purpose with this conversation. And that is and what you're saying, because it ends up with, in a conversation, that I can talk about things I'm super interested in, and that's about it. That's about it. Something that I have developed to ask questions, because I know it's important for neurotypical people to be asked questions about things they have said. So I pick up on the last word, or I pick up on something they have just said, but it's and then fortunately I'm very curious. So a lot of times I ask questions that then is questions that, isn't appropriate for the situation or the setting. So it's not all questions you can just ask about that you're curious about.
And it's not straightforward at all, is it?
Oh.
Because I don't read facial or body language. I'm missing an awful lot of the information that people are expecting within a conversation. And that is usually conveying the emotional tone. And I'm not picking up on it. I didn't know what to ask. They just said, just ask. And I thought, but you want to know why the sky's blue? Yeah, it wasn't appropriate. Yeah. And I hadn't learnt how to have a bank of potential questions, which I now do have. So I could sit there and find, okay, let's have an opening question. Yeah. And then sometimes with people I know now, I can pick up on it. And I do, but I have to know the person. And that, if you haven't got friends, you haven't got that connection in order to be able to build those questions, because you don't know what this person is about.
It's absolutely correct. And then also asking questions, I have experienced that a lot, asking questions that are inappropriate for the level of relationship that we have. I'm very quick at, meeting you right away, and then off we go and talk about, all the deepest things, that is going on in my life and alive in my life right now. And a lot of people can get, ooh, that was too quick, or that was, too soon. Or if I ask question in the same manner, then, ooh, that was way too quick. And then they withdraw. And I have no idea why. I have no idea what.
I got told I was too intense.
Yes.
And that is a very interesting thing to hear, isn't it? Yeah.
And too much.
Does that mean I'm talking too loudly, or talking too much, or talking about the wrong topic, or going into too much detail? It's not a straightforward sentence.
No, it's very unclear, but it's because it's a very subjective thing. It's because I have asked or said something that made the other person feel uncomfortable, and instead of them being about what made them feel uncomfortable, then I know what to do. But they don't. Then they just say I'm too much, or too intense, or or unusual.
Yes, absolutely. It's a minefield. It really is.
Yes. You then have I would like, and this is where I would like to segue, because you really try. I mean, you're such a beautiful person, and you really try. You ask them for feedback, and they start to give you feedback. And then you say, at the start of this process, the feedback was helpful. People said, you talk too much and don't let me get a word in. So I made a mental note to talk less for less time and then pause. And then this seemed to help. They said, you're too intense. So I tried to be gentler in the way that I spoke, or to give less detail. I tried to approach topic less directly. I didn't need that, but the people with me did. So I put effort into softening my speech. But as time went on, we still weren't really connecting. The feedback became more painful and confusing. I was given information such as, you're not listening to me, which was so confusing because I was listening as hard as I could. I was told, you're not interested in me. And this was painful. I was more interested in people than I had ever been in my entire life. And yet this wasn't coming across. I was told, you don't have empathy. This was both painful and confusing because I know I have a lot of empathy and I was trying to express it. Why couldn't the people I was talking to see that? That really, really hit home when I read that. That's like,
Yes.
Yeah. Could you talk about that period, please?
It was so difficult. The people around me were trying to help, really honestly trying to help. And I was very aware of that. But what I was being told didn't meet my experience. Yeah. These people were not used to dealing with people who were autistic. So they were trying to see what would help them if they were in that situation, which is a perfectly okay way of approaching this. But for me, after a while, I realized that you're not listening, actually translated as you're not responding to me in a way that shows me that you are listening. Yeah. And the same with you're not interested in me. I wasn't asking the sort of questions that they would expect from somebody who was actually interested in them. The fact that I was interested in them wasn't coming across because I wasn't making it a reciprocal thing. They were asking about me, but I couldn't ask about them. Didn't work. And finally, the lack of empathy. Now, that's really painful to hear, actually, but it was what was said to me.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think many autistic people have that experience.
If you Wikipedia autism, it's the first thing that is
Yes.
said, lack empathy, and I have never ever recognized myself in that. I'm very, very very empathic.
Yeah, yeah. So what was it that was making these people think I have no empathy? And in the end, it all comes down to the fact that I am not giving the responses that the people talking to me expected.
Yes.
Yes. And that is underlying all of it.
Yes.
And then they were confused.
Yeah.
And they were sitting there saying, well, this person's a bit odd, which if you've only ever met neurotypical people, then I am a bit odd.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. That's not really a value judgment. It's just a statement of fact, actually. Yes.
Yeah.
And how do we get past that?
Yes.
Because I really cannot pick up on that with somebody that I don't know.
Yes.
And that's the problem.
Yes. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And it's you're so spot on when you say that it's not that we don't have empathy, it's that we don't express it in the way that they expect us to express it. So they assume that we don't have empathy because we don't look and say and act the way that they would do when they.
And in fact, if they were expressing things in the way that I was, it would be showing a lack of interest and empathy. So it wasn't unreasonable for them to be thinking, if I was doing that, that's what it would mean for me. And then to project that in a sense onto me. We had to break through that, and it took time, and it took a lot of effort.
Yeah.
And it actually took me meeting people who had met autistic people before.
Exactly.
And therefore were not expecting these responses, for me to be able to build a sort of platform from which I could work
and you find
connect with others.
Yeah, go on.
to connect with others, I had to have something. I had to have some success in connecting with others. And that could only happen to begin with people who weren't expecting me to be like them.
Because at this point, you still do not know that you're autistic. You
No.
just think that you are one of those people that do not have friends, and you try so hard to fit in, be the square peg in the round hole, try so hard to fit in and be like the others. But then you find two friends that are used to autistic people, and you build really, really deep and meaningful friendships with them. Could you talk about that, please?
Yes, they didn't expect me to be anything other than what I was. They weren't continually falling over what I can't do. They saw what I could do. And I think if non-autistic people take one thing out of this chat, it's look at what I can do, not at what I can't do, please. Yeah. And then I listened to them and heard how they were talking to me and thought, well, maybe with somebody else, I can do that. And by this point, I really wanted to, because I was beginning to see what a difference friendship makes. And it was no longer something that was out there and wasn't going to be accessible to me. It was going to be accessible for me. I just had to figure out how to do it.
Yes.
And it took a while. It took years, actually, because I simply, as I say, I didn't know what the problem was.
Exactly.
I just knew that I couldn't do it in the way that I was being asked to do it. But because I wanted to, I was prepared and fortunately capable of finding ways round. And that is what I do. I find ways round. I will never be intuitive in the way that somebody who is neurotypical might be.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. So if we move into the round now where you get your diagnosis, how was your life before diagnosis?
Complicated. Always I was running up against this, that somehow I was different. No question about it. I just was different. But because I'm very intelligent and actually very willing to give things a go, I'd learnt to mask.
Yes.
Now, this is important, actually, isn't it? I'd learnt to look more neurotypical. And superficially, that works. But it doesn't work with intimate relationships. And that is what was happening, that there was a disconnect between what they could see I could do and what they could see I couldn't do, and none of us knew why. And then I got a diagnosis. And I didn't, of course, instantly get a diagnosis. It just was made clear to me that this was a possibility. So I looked into it. I did the online testing and thought, oh, okay, there is a real possibility here that I could be autistic. Because autism isn't just what I had thought it was, which was a combination of learning disabilities and complete inability to communicate, which was obviously I don't have. It could be something else. And at that point, I thought, well, if I am autistic, what does that actually mean? And I found a lovely website, part of the Autistic Society, which told me autistic people often struggle with this, and this. And I copied that, yes. And I sent it to the people that I was trying to build friendships with and saying, and this for each one is how it affects me. And it was that really that changed things. Then suddenly we all knew where I was coming from. And it wasn't that I was just choosing not to do this. It was that I actually couldn't do it in the way that they were asking me to do it. And they were very open to that. Sort of immediately, it was, oh my goodness. Oh, okay then. Yeah. And we went on from there.
Yeah. Yeah, because you as I said, you describe in the book that before the diagnosis, you were very well liked at work, and you were very well, liked at, in those, structured settings, but you never ever developed any kind of friendship. And as I said, that resonates so much with how very well liked in work, but friendships, not happening, not happening. And I also recognize the part about not identifying as an autist at all. To me, an autist was like a little nonverbal boy sitting in the corner doing equations. I wasn't like that. You know, I'm
Or looking at trains.
yeah, into trains.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So it didn't occur to me. It wasn't until somebody said, I actually think you're Asperger's, that I started, you know, to look into it. Yeah, exactly like you had. And then also the online testing, and you know, out of 50, I had 52. You know, it was like
Yeah.
so obvious. So obvious. Yeah. So then what happened? Because you had in your, now we're mixing things up a bit, because in your Buddhist practice, you had gone for ordination, tried for ordination, and it hadn't developed anywhere. And then as
It had
soon,
got a bit stuck.
yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly, because you can't do that. It's the same thing I'm experiencing in Trajnanandi, that the things that I need to do to become ordained, I can't do, which means that it's kind of like stuck. It just stops. Nothing moves on from there. But then as soon as you realized that you were autistic, then everything started to happen more smoothly. Could you talk about that?
I, at that point, had a preceptor to be. This is the person who is going to ordain me. And I just thought, I've got to talk to her about this. Yeah. So I did. And she was so open. And I could almost, she sat there after we'd talked about this for a bit, she just sat there quietly, and I could almost see cogs turning in her mind. And then she just said, okay, we must move this along. You need to be ordained.
Yes.
And it was that straightforward,
Yes.
actually. Yeah. I was close, if you see what I mean,
Yes.
even before I had the diagnosis. But it was just this one area where, for somehow or other, things had not clicked. And when people realize that it's not that, literally, it's not I'm choosing not to, it's that actually I can only do it differently.
Yes.
That was the breakthrough. And it was just, in a sense, more awareness on the part of everybody around me, myself included.
Exactly, because it's also,
Yes.
I also had the same experience, that once I got my diagnosis, there was so many things that just, you know, resolved themselves all by themselves just by me knowing. So there wasn't the expectation, or there wasn't, you know, the pressure anymore. It had everything just resolved. Really, really beautiful. Really beautiful. So then you get your diagnosis. And then what? What happened then? What is different in forming friendships and in?
I'm far more aware of why I can't do what I can't do. And therefore, I've put a lot of energy into thinking, okay, if I can't do it this way, how can I do it? So if people need me to make opening statements, I have learnt to make opening statements. And to start with something that isn't actually what I want to talk about. Yeah. On the understanding that this isn't what we're going to talk about, but it's a way in just to connect with the other person before we actually get to what we want to talk about. And that may well involve a cup of coffee. And it may well involve, you know, being in a cafe or something. And I need to be prepared for that. I need to know there's going to be background noise and things. And that's fine, as long as I know it's there. Yeah. So then, as I got to know people better, I began to be able to build a sort of mental file of the sort of questions that work with that person. Yeah, I don't know whether that resonates with you, Pernille, but it's...
Absolutely.
Yeah, I begin to know that this person really opens up if I could say something about XYZ. Yes. So that then got us to go deeper. And then it wasn't all me talking, because I could ask them something that they were interested in. And that makes it a much more equal and less monologue conversation. So, go on.
No,
Yeah,
go on.
ask. So It's a constant struggle. Never get me wrong on that. I am talking to you, Pernille. And, you know, we're talking, aren't we? We are having a conversation, both of us.
Yes.
I doubt if it's easy for either of us, but we can do it.
Yes.
Yes. And we can do that with non-autistic people, non-neurodiverse people. It's just that you have to be very aware of the structure that is needed, actually.
Yes.
It's the same when I'm writing an email. What I do is I write down what I want to say, and then I go back and make it relational.
Yes.
Yes, you know, otherwise it's too direct.
I do
It
the
just
same.
hits. Yeah,
I
yeah.
do the same. Yeah, I write down what I want to say, and then I do all the niceties. I
All the
need.
twiddly bits. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do the same. Yeah. So may I ask you, because it's a very, very fine line from doing what we're talking about now, us trying to wanting to relate, and wanting to engage, but staying us, for me to stay me and not mask. Because
Yes.
the masking is, oh my God, it's just the most evil part that we can do towards ourselves, because that is tied into a sensation of not being good enough, or not being worthy, or not being like the others, or it has that negative connotation on it when we mask, that we try to fit. So, but what we are talking about now, it's not about fitting. It's about staying ourselves, but managing somehow. How would you describe the difference between
Yeah.
the niceties and getting on, and masking, where it starts to become toxic?
It is complicated. Most of the time now, I don't mask. I have grown in confidence. What you see is what you get. But there are certain circumstances in which that doesn't work, and in which, for the circumstance to be smooth for everybody, I actually have to be fitting in. So, for example, if I'm at a funeral, that's the one that came to mind, I'm going to be fitting in with the people around me. So this is not about me. Yeah. But if I'm actually talking to people, I no longer try so hard to be what they are, because I've gained enough confidence now to know that actually with most people, I can actually find something to say. Yes. And I think masking is toxic, particularly if you're very good at it, which I think both you and I probably are, because it makes people think that you're not different. And therefore, when the differences arise, it's more of a problem.
Yes.
But at the same time, if you're so different that you can never fit in with anybody, that's a problem too. So I look at it as, it depends on the circumstance. What is needed in this particular situation? Is it needed that the focus needs to be somewhere else? In which case, I will be quietly there, but not making my presence felt. And I know how to do that. If I'm trying to build a conversation with somebody, I will use one of my bank of, let's have a starter questions, and then hope for the best. Because actually, all I can do then is be me. I can't, on an intimate level, mask, because actually, if you're masking, you're not being intimate. It's,
Exactly.
you've got a mask on.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's complete fake. You said the right word, that it's about staying me. It's also my experience that the difference in me communicating with people where I'm not masking is that I'm staying me, and I always keep remembering, this is not about me. The relation, I mean, when I speak it with an autist, when I meet with you, it's just, hi Prajnanandi, and then we start to talk about the biggest traumas in our lives. You're super easy
Yes.
into it. There we go. And I know that I can do that with autists, because there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just, my neural pathways are different. And when I speak with people that have the same type of neural pathways, we just do that. But when I speak with people that do not have the same neural pathways, then I need to remember, this is not about me. all those pleasantries, all those, I was once told that small talk is to acknowledge the other person's existence. And that helps me a lot in small talking with neurotypical people, because I'm just there, as a vehicle for them to feel comfortable and safe enough to start to talk about all the big issues. They can't do that. They need help with getting there. You and I can get there right away, but they need help in us getting there where we can talk about the big issues and what is really alive in our lives right now. So I
interesting.
just remember that it's not about me. It's not about me.
It is interesting, because actually I think, again, that's a strength of autism. You and I are just talking, aren't we? We don't need all the froth and all the fluff and all the other things that people need in order to go really very deep. And we are, actually, yeah. We're both talking about things that are really central to who we are. You and I have never met before.
No, it's the first time we meet.
Yes, yeah. And yet we can do that. And that's partly because I think we have built up some trust. I've talked before, but we've not actually met. Yeah. We're both contributors to the book. We're both autistic. We're both Buddhist. We have a background where it's likely to be that we'll be able to connect. It's much more difficult if you don't know that about the other person. Yeah.
And I also know that your work now in the Triratna order, because you're now an order member in Triratna, which is lovely. And then could you talk about what it means to be, a mitra and an order member? What is the difference? I'm asking because it's so significant that you are an autistic order member.
Yeah. For me, an order member is fully who I am. While I wasn't able to be ordained, I felt confined. I felt that I was trying, well, in a sense, to jump through other people's hoops. And I couldn't see the hoops. And now that pressure has gone. I can simply be who I am and know that I'm accepted within the order. And I think that is the biggest difference, actually. And I think it's why it's so important autistic people get ordained, because we cannot fully blossom until the strains of being in the ordination process are removed. And that is, in a sense, the biggest difference. I no longer have to be in that situation where I'm, in a sense, being assessed against something. Yeah. I've got past that. Now I can just be who I am. And I think that's one of the frustrations, actually, of being a mitra, is that you do get a bit stuck and you could see what it is you're looking for, but you can't quite get there. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And also the difference between, I can see of my fellow mitras, that they're doing all the right things and they seem just to know what it is that they need to do and they just do it. I mean, or when I see, wow, all the things that they just, pick up on and just do, which I know, I really,
yeah, I've lost count the number of times I've sat there thinking, looking at somebody thinking, how on earth did you know that was what was needed?
I did not.
How did you know?
You know that? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It also allows me as an order member to, for example, be teaching the Dharma, which is something I really want to do, and that for me is something I can give back. It's great. It's not just a question of taking, it's a question of giving back as well.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. It's the same that I have a YouTube channel where I'm teaching what I'm calling the awakening curriculum. It's about, the Bahia Sutta, the Samyana Sutta, and so it's very much about Dharma life, how you can implement Dharma into your life.
I'm fascinated. You like Bahia too.
Yes, love it.
It's just so clear, isn't it?
It is so clear. It's so clear. Yes, it's so clear. And what is funny actually, when I speak with other autists and they watch my curriculum in the awakening curriculum, for them it's just it's so clear. There's so clear things that they need to do, and they just do it, and then they just move along, and then it's where neurotypical people often need to hear things multiple times. And like we talked about, for an autist, as a good autist, we're told what to do, we do it, that's it.
Yes.
So yeah.
So I think one of the things that's really important for me is to think of autism as a difference rather than a problem.
Yes.
Actually,
Yes.
we are different to a lot of other people, but that is not necessarily something wrong.
No, not at all. I see it very much as a strength, especially when it comes to Buddhism, because to me, Buddhism and the Dharma, it's so straightforward. It's like a treasure hunt. When you start with the suttas, it's like a treasure hunt, and some information leads to another sutta that leads to another sutta. It's like, yeah. And because my brain is wired differently, I read the suttas differently than neurotypical people do. I see different things, and I can use it like almost like interdisciplinary, it's like the information I read from one sutta I can pick up on, oh, that's the number, it's number 8
Yeah.
again. And it's so because of my brain wiring, I apply the Dharma differently than neurotypical people do, which I see as a huge advantage, because it doesn't make it dogmatic in any way. I wouldn't be able to do religion or dogma in any way. It just doesn't work. But the way that I see the Dharma and I use the Dharma, it's much more alive, and that is what making the Dharma very, very, very useful tool for me as an autist.
Yeah. And also for the people around you.
Yeah.
One of the things that people say about me is I have great clarity.
Yes.
Well, I do.
Yes.
And that is a real strength. And it's because I'm autistic.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. And then via the Dharma, you get the tools to work with that clarity to make it, for the benefit of all beings.
Yes. For the benefit of all beings.
Not just
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you are within Prajnanandi, you are a great help for neurodiverse people. I know I'm part of the Prajnanandi Neurodiverse Hub, and I know that you're great help for so many autists, both mitras and order members that need help, and you're always helpful and supportive for anyone who's reaching out. So if you are part of Prajnanandi and you are a mitra and order member, then feel free to contact Prajnanandi. For support.
Yeah.
And you're making a really nice series with Ratnaguna at the moment. Where you're talking about it. Could you talk a bit about it? It's lovely as well.
I am. And it's interesting because it was Ratnaguna who approached me. It wasn't the other way around. He said, let's talk about this. And I thought, brilliant. Yeah, let's talk about it. Yes. So we did the first one, which is quite a long talk, but it's long because it covered just about everything, but not in a lot of detail. What we're going to be doing in future sessions is have shorter talks, but talking about one topic.
Yes.
So we're doing another one on probably Thursday. We're recording it, and it's probably going to be about sensory processing differences with neurodiversity.
Yes.
And how that can be a strength and how it can be a challenge, and what people can do to help and how we can help ourselves and that sort of thing.
Okay. Yes.
Because sensory processing differences don't just affect neurodiverse people. And there are some small tweaks which could make things much better. So I'm thinking probably this Thursday, which is, well, we're in April now, probably be up in May sometime on the Buddhist Centre online.
Yeah, I'm going to link to the first talk that you had in the description below this video. So if people are curious, they can listen to the...
Great, yes. And Ratnaguna made it very easy for me to talk.
Yes.
He actually was very, very skilled
Yes.
at how he asked for questions.
Yes. Yes. He's a lovely person, And I also think the more we talk about Buddhism and the more we talk about autism and Buddhist practice, the better. So I'm definitely gonna link to the conversation, so people that are curious about listening more into that, they can hear it.
Yeah, and I want to thank you, Pernille, for actually setting up these conversations.
Thank you.
because that was your initiative and it's working really well, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really find all the conversations that I've had with all the contributors, because we're from different directions, different denominations within Buddhism, and have so different experiences with how Buddhism helps us. I find that's very useful, because you and I, we're from Triratna, but for anybody that are from village Thich Nhat Hanh or Theravadan or whatever, is the foundation is the Dharma. How useful the Dharma is for an autist, because we have, like you say, we have a clarity. We just need the direction, and the Eightfold Noble Path is very, very useful. The Bahia Sutta is very useful. The Satipatthana Sutta is very useful. I remember the first time I read the Satipatthana Sutta, it was just, oh my goodness. When I'm walking, I'm walking. When I'm sitting, I'm sitting. When I'm talking, I'm talking. Not all that, myriad of experiences happening, with sensory smell and thought and all the layers of sounds, and that filter all of it out. Just focus on the one thing at a time. And it sounds so, obvious when I say it like that. That really, really made a difference. Really, really made a difference.
Yeah, it's a sutta I love too.
Yeah, such a personality.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
good. That's good. Absolutely lovely. I'll just check my notes and see. I think I have asked of all the questions. Yeah, no, you have a passage in the book where you say, you've gone from I don't have friends to I have many friends. Could you finish with talking about that? Because that is what that development that you have done as an autist in realizing how, first of all, getting standard questions, opening questions in a conversation. That's super helpful. But yeah, could you talk about that, going from not having friends and to having many friends? If you
Yeah.
say, what was it that did it for you? Which things, was it that you implemented into your life that wasn't masking, but healthy, staying within you and being you and true to you, but going from not having any friends to having many friends? Could you narrow it down, what that was?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it may sound a bit weird, but I think it comes down to trust. Trust in myself, trust in the person I'm meeting. That I can say something and have a reasonable assumption that actually it's going to be heard. And that came through a lot of time and a lot of effort. It wasn't quick. I had to meet people and meet people and meet people and meet people and meet people, because I didn't know how to do it and they didn't know how to do it with me. And so what I have now is a small group, not very many, of very intimate friends, and quite a lot of people that after 15 years in Triratna, it's 16 years now, I know quite a lot of people and I think of most of them as friends. Yeah, because I know that we can just sit down and talk. And that they know who I am, and they know that I'm autistic. And they know that therefore if I'm going off at a bit of a tangent, they can say so. Yes. And we can bring it back. I think the most useful phrase I learnt was, what I'm hearing is.
Yes.
To check that what I thought was going on was what actually was going on. And also it shows that I'm listening.
Yes.
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 You can't use it all the time. If you reply to everything with what I'm hearing is, it just becomes a repetitive patter. But if there's something you're not sure about and it's important, it's better to say, I'm hearing this. Is that what you're saying? Rather than assuming that what I'm hearing is correct. And that is, I think, the biggest thing that I've learned. Check.
Yes.
And then in real time, we can sort it out if it isn't.
Yes.
rather than me going away thinking, ugh, and the other person going away thinking, what? Yes, yeah, and us not meeting. It's great. I absolutely love having friends.
Yeah,
It's wonderful.
it
But
is.
it hasn't been easy, and it has taken a long time.
Yes. I also find it helpful having neurotypical friends that know me and know who I am and know and kind of like help me ease into new friendships. So
Yes,
they're kind of like a buffer between me and the new person where I feel comfortable with them and they can kind of like, say, oh, Pernille, could you talk about, she's very interested in, could you talk? So being like
yeah,
that middleman, picking up on the things that I don't pick up on. I find
yeah.
that very helpful as well.
And that's particularly true with the emotional stuff.
Yeah.
I quite often misinterpret what I think the emotions are. I still do that. But if somebody else is sitting there saying, oh, there's a different way of thinking about that, yeah, maybe it's something like this, yeah, rather than saying you've got that wrong, just saying actually it's different perhaps if we could look at it this way, yeah, that is really helpful. And people do that with me more often too, yeah, which is great. It helps me.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But it's friendship has happened because of a lot of effort from a lot of people, not just me. I've been very fortunate to find people that were actually prepared to put the effort in.
Yes. Yes. I agree. And I agree. It's exactly what I just said. Having neurotypical friends that I feel close to that helps me navigate and get closer to new people. It's so helpful. And it is 100% their effort. Because if they didn't do that, I know exactly where I would be. I would
Mm,
be where I've always been, kind of like on the outskirts.
yeah. So I think what I'm hearing from you, and certainly what I feel for myself, is gratitude,
Yes.
actually. So much gratitude to other people.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. All
yeah.
across.
It's wonderful.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely is. Absolutely is. Okay. Do you have anything last thing you want to say?
Not really. It's just been fun chatting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Beautiful talk. Beautiful talk. I really enjoyed it. I really
yeah,
enjoyed it. Well, may the merry
yeah.
game. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, yes. I'm just going to
Yes,
recording and then we can say goodbye afterwards. So,
yes. Okay.
okay. Thank you.